Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are fine. In our lecture today, we will discuss chapters 28 to 31 in Wuthering Heights, a novel by Emily Bronte. Now, starting with chapter 28, its summary and commentary. So, the main characters in chapter 28 are Zila, Nellie, Kathy, Linton, Heathcliff, Edgar, servants, and Mr. Green, who is a lawyer. Setting places Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. Time 1801. Moving on to the summary of chapter 28. Well, actually, the summary of chapter 28 includes three important points. The first point is about Nellie at Wuthering Heights. Zila enters the bedroom on the fifth morning of Nellie's imprisonment. As we have said before, Heathcliff imprisoned Nellie for 5 days. Zila tells Nellie that the village gossip has both Kathy and Nellie being lost in the marshes. Nellie finds Linton, who tells her that Kathy is being held prisoner and cannot be released. So, unable to get Kathy free and unwilling to face Heathcliff, Nellie returns to the Grange. That leads us to the second point of the summary of chapter 28, which is Nellie's return to the Grange. What happened there? At the Grange, Nellie assures Edgar that Kathy is safe and will be home soon. She also dispatches servants to Wuthering Heights to bring Kathy home. On their parts, the servants return empty-handed. Edgar sends for Mr. Green, a lawyer, to change his will. On her part, Nellie thinks she hears him arrive, but it is Kathy. With Linton's help, she has escaped. As a matter of fact, here, Nellie once again favors a lie instead of the truth. But this is probably advantageous for all involved, for nothing can be gained at this time by telling the truth to Edgar. Most importantly, the third and last important point in the summary of chapter 28 is Edgar's death. Edgar and Kathy are reunited after Kathy's escape from Wuthering Heights. And Edgar dies content, thinking his daughter is happily married. Later that evening, Mr. Green, the lawyer, arrives and immediately takes charge of the Grange, dismissing all the servants except Nellie. He attempts to have Edgar buried in the chapel, but Nellie knows that Edgar's will clearly states that he is to be buried next to his wife. Kathy is permitted to stay at the Grange until after her father's burial. Now, after giving a summary for chapter 28, we will move on to the commentary of the chapter. Well, in the commentary of chapter 28, we have two important points. The first one is about Linton, who faces his father, Heathcliff, for the first time. The second point is about Mr. Green as a symbol. So what about Linton and Heathcliff? And how does Linton face his father? Well, although Linton's word to Nelly echo his father's in regards to how he should treat his wife, Linton, in his own weakling way, finally stands up to his father when he enables Cathy to escape. So Linton faces Heathcliff in order to let Cathy escape. The second point, however, is about Mr. Green, the lawyer, who symbolizes the extent of Heathcliff's interference, using money and influence to bend the laws, encouraging a lawyer to sacrifice one client for another. On the other side, Heathcliff's retention of Nelly as housekeeper at Thrushcross Grange is his way of being practical as well as rewarding her for showing what he considers to be loyalty. Now moving on to chapter 29, its summary and commentary too. Well, the main characters in chapter 29 are Heathcliff, Cathy, Linton, and Nelly. Setting, places, Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. Time, 1801. Okay, as a matter of fact, the summary and commentary of chapter 29 include three important points. The first point is about Heathcliff, Cathy, and Linton. Well, after Edgar's death, Heathcliff arrives to escort Cathy home, informing her that he punished Linton for his role in Cathy's escape. And he refuses to allow Cathy to live at the Grange because he wants her to work for her keep, especially after Linton dies. Legally, both Linton and Heathcliff have greater claims to the Grange. Thus, Cathy has no choice but to obey the directive of her father-in-law. So Cathy speaks out against Heathcliff, stating her love for Linton and that Heathcliff is alone in the world. The second important point is about Heathcliff's cruelty and the reader's sympathy. Well, in reality, the fullest extent of Heathcliff's cruelty, what he does to Linton, is not shown on the page. Rather, readers are able to leave it to their own imagination. Nonetheless, he makes it painfully clear that Linton will never cross him again. On the other hand, although he punishes his son, Heathcliff is not entirely without feelings. However, the loss of Catherine has tormented him, and oddly enough, after all Heathcliff has done to other characters, many readers again tend to sympathize with him for what he has endured. And according to the last point in the summary and commentary of chapter 29, we have a return to the supernatural element and the caustic. Of course, through the ghost of Catherine Enshaw. So Bronte evokes the sympathy through Heathcliff's explanation that he has been disturbed nightly for 18 years, yearning to be reunited with Catherine, yet having her just out of reach. And as Cathy is baking her things in order to leave the Grange, Heathcliff confides in Nellie that he believes in ghosts, particularly the ghost of Catherine. Ever since her funeral 18 years ago, he has been feeling her presence and seeing her. Heathcliff's longing to be one with Catherine for eternity is the mark of a romantic of a man truly in love and truly tormented by the loss of his love. Yet, through his nature, he ends the chapter being as heartless as ever. So, as he leaves, Heathcliff instructs Nellie not to visit Wuthering Heights, for she is not welcome, and by informing Nellie that she is not to visit Wuthering Heights, Cathy is effectively left alone in her new home. Okay, that was all about chapter 29 in Wuthering Heights. Now we will move on to discuss another chapter, which is chapter 30, its summary and commentary. Well, as usual, the main characters in this chapter are Lockwood, Nellie, Zillah, Cathy, Heathcliff, and Harrington. Setting, places, Wuthering Heights, and Thrushcross Grange. Time 1901. Okay. Actually, the summary and commentary of chapter 30 include three important points. The first point is about the end of Nellie's narrative and Zillah as a primary narrator. So this chapter is the end of Nellie's narrative because Nellie now is in the Grange and all the events are in Wuthering Heights. So now Nellie's narrative is ended. The question here is that how can Nellie get any information about the events and the characters at Wuthering Heights? Actually, she knew about them by Zila, the housekeeper in Wuthering Heights. So Zila now serves as Nellie's source of information about Kathy, and thus made her a primary narrator here. So the end of Nellie's primary narrative brings the story full circle to chapter 1, when Lockwood first visited the Hyatts. Moving on to the second important point in this chapter, that is Linton's death and Kathy's closeness to Harriet. Well, following Heathcliff's orders, Zillah refused to help Kathy when she first came to Wuthering Heights. On his part, Harriet was not able to do anything for her either. Because of the cold reception she received after her father's death, per Heathcliff's instructions, Kathy is not friendly with either Zillah or Harriet. Until the day Linton dies, Kathy tends to him herself. After his death, Kathy is not willing to let Zillah or Harriet to be nice to her. However, an attraction between Kathy and Harriet obviously exists. He offers her food and a seat by the fire, and she allows him to help her retrieve books that are out of reach. Neither one wants to admit having even a passing interest in the other, but both remember their friendly first meeting in the moors when, as we have previously said, when Kathy tried to go to the fairy cave, she passed by Wuthering Heights, and then she met Harriet to eventually spend good times together. The last important point in the summary and commentary of chapter 30 is Heathcliff's reaction towards the friendship between Kathy and Harriet. Well, for sure, Heathcliff wants to prevent any friendship from developing between Harriet and Kathy, because Hindley destroyed the relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff. And because he is miserable, he tries to ensure that no one else is happy. At the end of this chapter, on the other side, Lockwood, he is recuperated, informs Nellie that Heathcliff may look for another tenant for the Grange. Now, finally, the last chapter to be discussed in this lecture is chapter 31. Its summary and commentary. Okay, the main characters of chapter 31 are Lockwood, Nellie, Heathcliff, Kathy, and Harriet. Setting, places, Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. Time, 1801. Well, the summary and commentary of chapter 31 include 4 important points. The first point is about Lockwood as a narrator and his trip to Wuthering Heights. Lockwood is still the outsider. Obviously, you must know more because he is the narrator of the events, and they have not yet come to close. He makes a trip to Wuthering Heights and carries a note from Nellie to Kathy. Moving on to the second important point, which is about Harrington and Kathy. On his part, Harrington takes the note at first, but noticing Kathy's tears, returns it to her. She in turn still treats him coolly and makes fun of his attempts at reading. Embarrassed, Harrington flings his books into the fire. Actually, Kathy and Harrington, although still arguing, show signs of developing a friendly relationship. And this is an important point in this chapter. The third important point is about Harrington and Catherine Anshaw, Kathy's mother. What about them? Well, when Heathcliff returns, he comments that Harrington favors Catherine more and more each day. That is to say, Harrington is resembling his aunt Catherine. This is something Heathcliff did not foresee and seems to disturb him. Now, in addition to the memories of his lost love, Heathcliff must also deal with Harrington's resemblance to his aunt Catherine. So both the memories and physical reminder are beginning to take their toll on Heathcliff. The last important point in this chapter, which is so important too, is Heathcliff's retirement. So this chapter provides foreshadowing for the end of the novel. Heathcliff is softening, and his plans for total revenge do not seem as important to him. That was the end of our lecture today. For further reading, please refer to these references. Next lecture, we will discuss the final chapters of Wuthering Heights that are 32 to 34. Thank you very much for your time and good luck.